You Booked It, episode 19. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. Alrighty, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Ilir Avdyli. Are you ready for this, Ilir?
Yes, totally. Very excited about this.
Brilliant. Ilir was born and raised in Albania. His talent picked him out of the crowd and took him traveling and performing all over Europe and Asia by the age of 13. Classically trained in ballet with a background in music gave him an advantage to digest an art form in more than one dimension. By the time he was 18, he had made his way to the USA and worked for Nashville Ballet and TDT. For 8 years, Ilir performed at Le Rêve at Wynn Las Vegas, as well as many other shows up and down the Strip, including Cirque du Soleil. His global work has even given him the opportunity to work as a judge on international TV shows. Ilir, that was a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, who you are, where you're from, where you're currently calling home, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Thank you, Dan, for giving me this opportunity. It's somewhat feeling so narcissistic about speaking about myself. But considering being in the situation, I don't mind it at all. Being a performer is part of enjoying ourselves and our credibility on describing a storyline. So, without going too much deeper in this, I was born in Albania. It's a country north of Greece, east of Italy, south of ex-Yugoslavia. We have our own language. It's considered to be about 40,000 or 50,000-year-old language. Yet, it's the most dissected country in Europe. We've got Albanians in 5 different regions of the Balkans. So, without going too deep into the history, that's pretty much where I come from. Now, my home is in Las Vegas, Nevada. America has been part of my life for the past 25 years, and by sharing these years, I do not want to say how old I am, yet it shows I am pretty old. So, along those lines, I've been in Vegas now for the past 15 years, and I've enjoyed what Vegas had to offer in the entertainment industry. I've been a performer, as you mentioned earlier, in the Le Rêve show, where I enjoyed it tremendously because it had a plethora of art forms in it, from uh, uh, water to flying to dancing to singing to music to everything you can imagine. But also, Vegas offers a lot more than just shows. It's literally the mecca of entertainment, and because of that reason, you get to be faced with so many different needs of your art or talent. Especially knowing there's so many industrial work, as we call them, to where so many conventions come here and do their presentation of new products and so far and so on. And we, the entertainment, are the one that put an aura on them and make them more valuable to the clients or the services that they provide. So within that sense, slowly but surely, on this whole experience as a performer, we've touched so many different fields of life within itself. And I have been very, very lucky to have been able to have been doing it for a living, and been enjoying the experiences that has been providing so far.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Well, let's move on to the next section here. And look, I am a sucker for a good quote. So, what is your favorite quote that you'd like to share with our listeners?
For performers, the very basic and most important one is one word: breathe.
Breathe.
Yes.
Perfect. And how have you applied that into your professional life?
Pretty much every second of the day that I get to recognize my contents, I go, take a deep breath, let it all in, and just restart again or continue on with whatever the task is.
Perfect. I love that. So simple, but it is so profound at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's get into this section. So, Alir, of course, you are an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think that you would agree. The entertainment industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that to create and to have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, of course, there is an outrageous amount of fun that we get to have on stage and performing for people, there is also our fair share of obstacles and challenges and failures that we are going to experience. And we're going to have to move forward through those if we want to continue having this successful career. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
If there is one word that I could use for this as well, it would be called value. How do we recognize value, and how do we place investments on it? That comes with time, by recognizing more of what your capabilities are, and what industry you're in the entertainment world. But learning how to value yourself, learning how to sell yourself cheap but expensively in the same time, you'll learn how to adjust with how valuable your product is. Overvaluing yourself might cause a backsplash, and undervaluing yourself would just cause you to hurt yourself more. So, learning how to value yourself within relations to the industry has been my main goals, and I have done my what do you call it, my my homework, or my the uh, uh, discovery of the formula within my own capabilities. Okay, could I afford to work 12 hours a day, dance my heart out, and at the end of the day pass out asleep, or continue drinking and not be ready for the next day? And all these abusements that we do to ourselves because of being an artist. This is the only way we discover ourselves, of going to the limits. But if there is one word, would be just learning how to value your capabilities.
I love that. And it's certainly not something that you can wake up one day and have the answer to. I think what you're also saying is that it comes from experience and the maturity of having a career, screwing things up, realizing, ooh, maybe I went a bit too far, pushed it too much this time. And it's always a constant readjusting to find your optimal mix.
Definitely so. And it's always a growing process. It never comes to an end. It's learning how to accumulate information, learning how to manage it within yourself, and also being, not too forthcoming with it, because unfortunately in this industry you have people that know what they're doing, and also people that don't know what they're doing. And because they end up being the ones that are providing you this opportunity to do your art form, you have to politically manage yourself to where you build up good relationships. And these good relationships means, um, you know, in a networking format. It's not like in a different industry where it's more like, authoritarian, to where you have one CEO and it just trickles down to all the way to the last basic worker. In the networking industry, you're pretty much, you have to make friends with everybody, no matter how important or non-important they may be, because you may end up dancing with a person that you could not stand, or you may end up dancing with a person that you just idolized, and not knowing how to balance yourself with those situations, it will, it means an end to your career, or it'll mean, for you to have it harder to stay in that career.
For sure. And I think it even expands further out to, you said, be nice to everybody and get to know everyone. And you also never know where people are going to end up in their careers. The person that you're dancing with on this gig might be the person that creates the production company that provides you the majority of your work in the next 10 years. So you
Exactly.
never, you, you always want to be networking and be a positive person and easy to work with, I think.
Definitely so. There's also another trick that I don't mean to stretch on it too much. Not Never operate with a fear, but definitely operate with a curiosity that only values you. The moment that we try to sell our capabilities in an environment where nobody's trying to buy, we're causing what do you call it, a situation of muffledness, to where we end up becoming building our own this surrounding wall, where we're not building even any doors in it, and we're trapping ourselves in and losing the capability to evolve in our art form. Art within itself is a language, and it requires practice. um, Without being able to practice this art form with your surrounding, or what your art form requires, you're losing the capability of speaking that language. So without making it too dramatic, it is very self-explanatory. You got to stay hungry, continue working on your craft, and be mindful that everything has something to teach you. My grandfather used to say, "Pay attention to a fly that passes by. You never know what you will learn from it."
I love that. That's
Yep.
fantastic. And yes, thank you for your insight on that. So let's move to this next section, to a time when I like to call your spotlight moment. That
Mhm.
one moment in time that you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Mhm. Um, Unfortunately, right now I'm uh, a lot more cooked, mentality-wise, and therefore my wiseness into giving an opinion on it might be a little over the head. But to go back to that moment of feeling that spotlight, I felt it on my very young age. I was 13 when I traveled for the first time outside of my country. And just a little history, as I said earlier, my country used to be under socialistic communistic dictatorship for 45 years. And at the age of 12 or 13, I literally was in it, just like the North Korea is right now. This is what Albania used to be. Uh, that situation, pretty much, of me traveling outside the country for the first time and representing my country, abroad, gave me the opportunity to like see myself in a different angle, to where I feel like to this day it's the awe moment. Um, and actually, I did write a show in 2019 called Ah, which it relates directly to the whole point of what it means to be at awe with your situations. Um, Finding myself as an entertainer, it was not something that I made a decision on. I think I discovered it accidentally when people paid attention to my move, or to my smile, or to my run, or to my jump. And these attentions that we as humans constantly look forward to be seen for, uh, gave me that starting point of building on top of it. And I noticed that this industry provided quite a bit of that capability, that it came natural to me. So here I am today, and I when I look back to seeing this is what I'm going to do, this is I'm going to become, it was not a choice. It kind of you went through metamorphosis within situations of dancing and playing characters and either holding a couple of tunes in a certain show or playing a certain instrument in certain places. So it was definitely not a black and white decision. It just kind of melted into my everyday life, and here I am today.
Fantastic. That's a great journey. And let's piggyback on that question
Mhm.
to your favorite or your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if those happen to be part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
I see. Uh, I think I have been lucky that I have booked so many gigs and shows and productions, and to try to remember one, it would I would do it unjust to the reality of how many every single one of them has made a an impact in me. Uh, when I look at them on the plethora of their existence, I look back and I miss that feeling, to tell you the truth. Uh, Part of it had everything to do with not knowing what I was faced with. Yet, the moment that I knew that I had a certain eye on me or a certain smile of whoever was choosing the next production, it literally gave me hope to continue doing what I thought I was doing good at that moment, or what I thought, and might have not been the professional move. It was not necessarily the perfect turns or jumps or leaps that I did. It might have been just maybe a simple smile, or maybe just my hair spiked in a certain way that made it recognizable for the people that were auditioning me to look at me and not look at somebody else that maybe had worked harder on it, but the delivery was on a wrong timing. So yes, definitely one of the main situations was when I won first place for a TV show I did once, right before I came to the United States, and it was a competition between about 150 performers, and definitely that was not, it doesn't fall to the description that you gave about, oh, I booked it. It was literally, oh my god, I won it. But it was the same feeling as when you win something in the audition. It was the same thing that I did a whole TV show to win this particular contest,
Of
and
course.
it definitely had a feeling of high, and this feeling of high as a performer will always follow you every time you get on stage, every time you prepare to get on stage. Every time you get offered an opportunity to be on stage and describe your art form through a choreography or through a dance or through whatever gets to be given to you.
That's fantastic. And I love that you mentioned that sometimes, it's maybe not that technical thing. It's not the turns, it's not the jumps, it's maybe the simple smile. And I believe that so often that's the stuff that is the make and break of getting cast. Uh, because in my opinion, if you're in a room for at an audition and you're assuming that everyone could technically, be cast in that show from a technical standpoint, well then the fact that you can turn, the fact that you can jump is just kind of your baseline. It's what else are you bringing to it? What else are is special about you?
Exactly, exactly. And the only thing that the closest in relations to the show that I did in Vegas called Ilir I do remember that we had auditions every 3 months, and at times the amount of dancers auditioning for the show were between 300 to 400 people. And to
Wow.
think that every 6 months this auditions were happening, and I had booked this gig for 8.5 years, it's mind-boggling. And to think that it was only because I was the best dancer, it would be a lie if I were to lie to myself and just accept it as reality. Yet, to someone that hears it, it definitely is very impressive. Especially, one of the best shows in Vegas that has been now for the past 7 years.
Absolutely. I love Larev. Seen it 3 times now.
Well, there you go. Now you know what it takes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the present for a moment. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, we are amidst this very unique global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
As you said earlier, the entertainment industry now has morphed into so many different forms. And so there's no such a thing anymore as just, oh, you should be a great dancer. Oh, wait a minute. What if you are an okay dancer and an okay singer and an okay painter and an okay musician? Yet you have all these four art forms conjoined into an art form that somewhat provides you an upper hand against the best dancer or the best singer or the best musician, to where and as a independent entity they're only stuck on that one language form. So here I am now, pretty much fell into the idea of writing shows, writing stories, coming up with the experience that I've gone through for this many years, to articulating within my internal form of what is a new language to describe an art form. And the reality of art is the lie we get to tell through art to discover the truth. And the more pure that is in the form of lie, the more truthful we become with the truth that we're trying to tell.
Hmm.
So the projects that I've worked on lately, as I said earlier, I send you a link of my website. I wrote a show called that's without wanting to minimize it, it's like a variety show. But just like a variety show, it described different stories to where there's not a stop between the numbers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The show is concentrated in between the numbers. The numbers are the so-called the between uh, the number shows, but the concentration is more into the connection of the numbers. It's just like when we tell a story, to where a word by itself might have a lot of meanings depending on what the quality of the people that see it. Yet, if you take that word and you conjoin it to a noun or to a verb or to a somewhat of a conjunction of words, then you're describing a little story that takes you a little bit away from your experience, even though you recognize that word just on that experience that you've had. So, fiddling with this personal art forms in a very personable space has made it my enjoyable new frontier. So I did write this show, and this show pretty much has given me the opportunities to think outside the box. But even though with this pandemic coming around, uh, that has faded away a little bit. The idea that creating an intimate show makes it a little difficult with all this social distancing things. So
Yeah.
you have to wait now or adjust to becoming part of a social media guru. And in order to build up your art form within social media, you got to be a guru in social media, and that takes either you want to invest in social media to where you recognize what the industry has, and also invest in it to provide more people to go through your channel, or you'll just wait on the old-fashioned form to where when the situation becomes as normal as it used to be, to where you would operate the same old-fashioned things. But we have to adjust, and we have to um, go with what the situation provides. So here I am right now, just writing stories, putting shows together, thinking of different art forms that can join them with one another. So what I mean by art form, I mean different languages. They don't necessarily have to be just things you paint or you sing or whatever. They can also be storytelling. And pretty much everything is a storytelling. So I try to go back to the roots of describing an art form through that way.
I love that. And I love that you talked about the transitions and the all the between moments because I remember being in dance classes and always it was always being hammered into me. It's the transitions, it's the stuff between the big stuff that matters. And I love that you brought that up and highlighted that.
Yeah, glad to do that.
Great. Well, let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview, and I call it the Grease Lightning round. And I'm going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Hmm.
Perfect. All right. First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Economical situations.
Right. Finances and things like this?
Yeah, to
Yeah.
where either uh, you have the opportunity to go do it, but it will take time before the money comes, or you have to do this now until the money comes, or so the financial situations pretty much dictated the career.
Great. And second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Stay hungry.
Love it. Third question. What is something that's working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Uh, Without wanting to go back to the very first thing of just learning how to breathe, which is something that most dancers at times forget how to do. Um, but what really kept me going is staying hungry and not necessarily focused, but staying, what do you call it, mm, curious about everything. That that helped me then, and that has helped me now because
Staying
now I'm
curious.
curious. Yeah, staying curious with everything you do, even when you're not doing something, when you're not told to do something.
Great. And the fourth question. What is the best resource, whether that is a book, a movie, a podcast, a YouTube video, maybe some piece of technology you've found that is helping your career right now?
A New World is a book called written by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah,
The basics of it has everything to do with recognizing our senses and our awareness, to where everything else describes itself after it.
I love that. I have read his, what is it called? The Power of Now, I believe is what it's
Hmm.
called. I've read
Hmm.
that a long time ago, but I think I'm going to have to pick up that book as well.
They go in somewhat in a like a rainbow format. They kind of describe one another,
Hmm,
because it all goes back to the basics of how much our brain wants to lie. It wants to jump in conclusions directly because it wants us to keep working. It's one of, like, I've thought, from what I've read, I've learned to understand that our brain is it's a hard-headed one.
yes, agreed. All right, well, fifth question. This is
Uh-huh.
probably my favorite one. If you had to start your career from scratch, but still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in the entertainment industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or the same?
I would not change a thing, but considering now that the glitch is that if I knew what I know now, I would have not become the one that I am today. So it
Absolutely.
kind of it kind of like it kind of discards each other. But if I were to take the hypothesis and kind of go down the ramp and kind of become a little bit of a Alice in Wonderland in the situation, the only thing that I would not want to change is the ability to be more aware. When you're younger, your hormones get in the way. It's really hard to concentrate on some things, on some epiphanies that they're so beautiful, that now they're beautiful because you're capable of seeing them. But then at that time, you you're so bombarded with everything that the ability to enjoy that moment becomes just like a little picture that doesn't move.
Right. I can absolutely relate to that with all sorts of experiences that I look back on in my late teens, my early 20s that you look back and I'm like, wow, I really didn't take the time to properly absorb what I was
And
experiencing. And now
yeah,
now it would be a completely different experience for me if I went there because, I think I feel like I slowed down a little bit. I I take time to appreciate things a little bit more. And I can imagine in another 20 years, it's going to be that all over again.
Definitely so. And the hardest part about it, even to some extent, to some other artists who somewhat have created the opportunity to somewhat have had these epiphanies of awareness at that moment. The capacity of the experiences have not allowed to create room to even be able to allow this epiphany to stay there and recognize it, because usually it would push you to want to do something else. It's
Hmm.
almost like, when you have the opportunity of, would you ever want to buy the best car uh, that you already have? No, because you already have it. So going back and wanting to have the same thing you already had, but now you have the awareness, you've already recognized it, what it is. And without trying to play too much into the words, yes, I wish my awareness was more noticeable. I wish my ability that that had been taught to me was not so structured. I would have hoped it was a little bit more opened into the capabilities. Yet, in the meantime, without that structure, I wouldn't have not been able to remember it as I remember it now. So it's like a two-sided face. It's kind of hard to say, oh no, I like to be happy. No, I like to be sad.
Yeah, right.
It's like a give and take. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, last question. What
hmm
is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your career in this industry that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Make the best with what you have. Yeah. Wonder with as much as you can, but make the best with what you have. It's kind of like my grandmother used to say all the time. You should definitely dream all the time, but make sure that you have your feet on the ground.
Yes. Because
So
if we can't dream it, it can't ever become reality. But
true.
there is the practicality of the
Yes,
now.
that's exactly it.
Wonderful. Well, Ilir, to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. So, where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Oh yeah, I mean the basics would be going to my Instagram. I lately have not been very active there, because part of being at home and kind of doing self rejuvenation of thoughts and so far and so on, it has not been a good time to share. Um, but I also have my website, iaproductions.com, and also there's a link there to my show, and you have a sneak peek on things that this production company is capable of doing, and we provide in it choreographies and dancers and so far and so on, and new ways of marketing strategies and for corporate events and venues.
Perfect. And what is your personal Instagram handle?
Is Ilir AV11.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Well, Ilir, thank you so much once again for joining us today and being on this episode. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.